Let's say you have a very successful career or life, but you don't feel fulfilled. Ever had that feeling? Do you have those nagging thoughts? Is this all there is? What's next? Do I really want to do this the rest of my life? We all do. If you're being honest, every one of you have had those thoughts. But a lot of us, many of us, never take action. We just remain stuck and unhappy and unfulfilled. We're going to talk about things like we tell ourselves first, we'll tell ourselves, oh, I'm too old to change. This is all I know. Or I don't know what the first step is to try to move forward. Well, today we're going to find out what those first steps are. My guest is Christine Passo. Now, Christine works on uncovering worthiness and purpose in women. She's a life coach for mid-career women. It's a very specific niche that she has picked. She's a keynote speaker, LinkedIn live host of inspiring, meaningful communications, and she's a mental health advocate. Christine, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's always wonderful to have conversations with you, and I am so grateful for you inviting me today.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's our pleasure. Christine, you have had quite an interesting background. You put it out there for the world, and share some of that with the audience around the world, if you would.
Sure. I might mix it up a little bit with you, Frank,
Sure.
because I think, sometimes we tell the same story, but I just want to mix it up a little bit. So we're going to go way back to when I was younger. You talk about my background, and so much of who we are starts during childhood. So much of who we develop as adults comes from our childhood. And for me, what always stands out so much is how I was so involved in team sports. I loved it so much. And I loved it because I love the camaraderie. I love the teammanship that we had. And I especially loved being in that position to root my team members on individually, right? So if they scored a goal or they had a great play, soccer was one of my favorite sports. But it was always so important to me to call them up, right? And say, wow, what a great play that was. And, unbeknownst to me, I was coaching at a young age. I just didn't realize how much it would turn into my future 5 decades later or decades later, depending on how old I was. But, so much of that team involvement has been a part of my life. And then something else that's really drawn a lot of attention, I feel like this last year, are the differences in generations. So of course we have the baby boomers, Gen X. I know I'm skipping. Actually, no, it goes baby boomers and then Gen X and those below. Well, I'm a Gen Xer. And we never, we're like kind of considered that generation that got neglected, left behind. Nobody talks about them. But we've been coming out of the woodwork like crazy this year. And I wouldn't change one bit of the childhood, the 70s and the 80s when I grew up, because it taught me much about how to be proper and stand on my own. Because I think that everybody in our generation, we're raised that way. We were latchkey kids and we were doing our own laundry in elementary school. And it was just a total change. And, I don't think I'd have the immunity I had today that I have today if I wasn't drinking out of the garden hose, right?
That's very true.
And so we talk about background, and that those are the things that stand out the most to me and that I'm most proud of now that I'm in my 50s.
That's interesting because a number of people who played team sports, I played team sports, do end up following some kind of a leadership role or a coaching role even before we knew you were coaching. That wasn't a term back then, but that's something that because you are engaged and you are looking out and you are a sum of the part rather than trying to be the entire thing. And that's it's amazing. Now, Christine, you chose. I'm hearing this a lot from people in our age bracket here. You chose to leave a very successful 20-year plus career in sales executive and a sales manager. What was missing? Why did you want to leave?
Oh my gosh. Like pretty much everything was missing. So let's go back a couple decades to college. And this was when I don't know if it's still like this, to be honest. I don't have children, but it was, what are you going to study? What are you going to do for the rest of your life? Pick your major and know what you're going to do the rest of your life. And oh my gosh, I remember the pressure. And I spent a few years going to community college because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And finally, I had this great mentor. She was a friend of my sister's, and she had just received, I think, her master's degree in social work. And she said, Teen, so my nickname is Teen. She said, Teen, I think you'd be great as a social worker. I think you would love the degree. I think you would love the study and the people in it. So I said, oh, it sounds amazing. So that's what I studied. I transferred to UMBC and I studied social work, and I graduated with a social work degree, ready to go make a difference in this world. I was like, oh my gosh, let's do this. And I get out and I look at the jobs that are available. And it's Department of Social Services, Child Services, and just really difficult jobs that weren't for me. I mean, those that were doing it, oh my goodness. I mean, there was some serious burnout happening back then. It was really, really rough. And I thought, that's not what I want to do. And there weren't really as many coaches getting involved with a degree unless it was clinical, unless, people were going in and sitting down in a chair and you are therapizing people 8, 9 hours a day. And I thought, I can't do that either. So my mom said, well, you're really personable. Maybe you should look into sales. I said, okay, I will take a look at it. Frank, that's what I spent the next 20 plus years of my life doing, was sales and account management. And did it ever feel right? No, it never did. I always was suffering from imposter syndrome, which is, the two words of the last couple of years. But I was also of the generation where I was told you don't have to like your job, but you just have to do it. And you have to earn your paycheck so you can take vacations and pay your mortgage. And that's what I did. I stayed in it. Um, and what I tried to do is, because I knew I was unhappy, I knew I was not fulfilled. But of course, no way, no knowledge of how to get out of it. So instead, I would go for those short-term resets, right? Which meant, oh, I'm going to take this great vacation and forget about the miserable life I'm living. I'm going to go on this great big hike and feel like I've accomplished the world and everything will be better. No, those were all temporary. And until I really took a look in the mirror and said, you're living the wrong life. Like it is either stick with it and be miserable or make a change and don't be scared. And so that's what I did. After 20 plus years, I said, I got a lot of life left to live. I plan on being here for a while. I want to do something I love.
I love that story. That's something interviewing somebody yesterday, Christine, and they said pretty much the same type of thing. And I said, look, very few people stay in the same career their whole life. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Back when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, it was you worked in steel, you worked on the railroad, and if you didn't get killed from some accident at the workplace, then 30 years later they gave you a watch and you were out of here. But you were miserable the whole time, right? And then it comes down to I interviewed Dr. Edward Hess from University of Virginia. He's a futurist. And he said something that just blew my mind. He said, Frank, children entering kindergarten today, 65% of those children work in a career that doesn't exist today.
Really?
Think about that. So he says, you get your degree, you learn as much as you can, because what you learn can be applied. What you just said, the critical thinking, the ability to make decisions. Those are things that doesn't matter what the career is. Those are things you have to have.
Yes.
I love it. Now, let me ask you this. I hear so many people, now coach is like the trigger word. Everybody's a coach. We get so many different messages from people say, I'm a life coach. So what is a life coach? And then how did you zero in on your niche?
Well, I'm going to address first how I zeroed in on my niche because it's such a big part of why I decided to be a coach. So when I made that decision, I looked in the mirror and I said, you have a choice to make. Either you're going to live the rest of your life miserably, or you're going to take a step forward and not be afraid. And I went through a major life transformation. And that transformation was to purposely discover my purpose because I'm one of those people that feel like I want a purpose in life, that I want to make an impact and I want to change lives. I want to help people change their lives. And so, in walking that journey myself and knowing all the decisions I had to make and the fear I had to overcome and the misery that came before it, I'm so passionate about guiding mid career women through this transformation because so many of them, just like I did for such a long time, think there's no way out. This is what I'm supposed to do, and this is the way it's going to go. Or, why should I be selfish? Why should I do things to please myself when I have a family to take care of? Well, you know what? The more that we please ourselves and take care of the things that we need in our lives, the better we can show up for everybody else that is in our life. And we're teaching lessons then, right? So when we make smart choices to change our mindset and be more curious, those women are teaching their kids to stay curious instead of sticking and just do what you have to do, right? So everything changes in that transformation, and that is what geared me towards being a purpose and transformation coach, is living it, going through it, and being absolutely fascinated with the study of it, and learning more via certifications that I've done. Now, what is a life coach was the first part of this question.
Hmm.
And it's actually really timely that you're asking me this because just a few days ago, I responded to an article on LinkedIn asking the same very similar question, which was, how can you reduce conflict in your life and at work? And I mean, it was a no-brainer for me because that is a part of life coaching. So, of course, there are a lot of different niches. You have executive coaches, career coaches, mindset coaches, relationship coaches. I mean, you pick one little topic and it's out there. But for purpose and transformation, going through and working with a coach on your purpose and transformation will help you resolve conflict in your life because conflict comes from within. Other people don't cause problems. We do because we have unresolved feelings and unresolved issues from the past. And everything we say and everything we hear is a direct reflection of how we feel, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. So, by working with a coach, a life coach, 100% conflict in your life will be drastically reduced.
I love that answer. What I hear, I was a corporate executive for many, many years, and I had a number of women who were at that stage that worked for us. And it was, and I would talk to them quite a bit because we traveled a lot. And they would say, there's no place else to go, Frank. This is it. I'm not going to get to the next level up. That's not going to happen. The glass ceiling is there. I'm not taken seriously. My opinion doesn't seem to matter. Um, I'm here because they needed to check a box.
Right.
And I would say, you're here because you're very good at what you do. And I love what you said because if you don't, self-acceptance is a big deal. And I think that's a lot of what you promote. Is that correct?
It is. It really, really is. And actually, that's something that I think separates me from other coaches, right? So there, just like there are tons of LCSWs treating clients in therapy, psychiatrists, psychologists, there's just as many life coaches, but everybody is different because they bring who they are. And something that I love about the life coach career in the industry is we can truly be authentic about who we are. So therapists, psychiatrists, they're really not supposed to show a face. They're supposed to be the strong one that knows everything in life, right? But coaches, we can raise our hand and say, I've lived a hard time too. And that's why I'm going to be that much more understanding of a coach to you because I've been there and I've gotten beyond it. And so with me, what you see is exactly what you get. I have this series on LinkedIn and now on Instagram, and it's called Raw Morning Thoughts. And if I haven't even had a sip of coffee, but I have a thought, I record myself. So I might look tired, right? But who doesn't look tired first thing in the morning? You know, I'm just trying to be a real person and not a show. And in that, when I work with my clients, I don't have a super set program. Okay. So, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I run my clients through program XYZ and everybody goes through it. Well, everybody that I talk to and that I work with has a different past and a different today. And so focusing on where the client is and what is important to them, I will 100% tailor the program that they will get when I work with them. And I think that's important. You know, we're all different people. We are trying to get out of that one little box that we've been in for decades. Why would I put them back in it, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I've heard you say, and I love the comment you made. It was, we're always told, communicate to understand. Don't wait
Mhm.
to respond. Listen to understand. And you said to me, no, that's wrong. Listen to accept, because you may never understand, but do you
Mhm.
accept?
Yes.
And I think that's what you bring to your to your clients is it's okay. First off, you have to accept yourself, but then as your coach, I'm going to accept you also. And once you have that acceptance, it becomes significantly easier to make the change. Is that right?
Yes, it's you know, I think that when we focus on understanding what people are saying, first of all, the minute somebody speaks to us, we're already disconnected because what they feel and what we feel are two different things. What they've been through in their life and how they um, perceive or I'm having a hard time thinking of the word right now, but what they do with those words that they are heard, what somebody is saying to them, they're not processing it the same. And that's because we all have different feelings, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. So, right out of the bat, we are disconnected and not communicating and probably having a misunderstanding right at the gate. So, knowing that, how can we possibly understand what somebody else is saying? And, you know, couples go to therapy, and, you know, I'm not really saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think we're fighting an uphill battle in being forced to understand what somebody says. Instead, we have to accept that it's not about us, it's about them. What they are saying is not about us. It is 100% about them. And I said that twice on purpose because it is true. And we just have to listen and hear what they are saying. They're trying to get their point across about what they're feeling and thinking. Just let it go with that and then say, okay, I accept that. And not even in a rude kind of way. I mean, honestly, I used to have conversations with my father, and he would say, well, I accept that. And I'm like, well, that sounds really negative. You know, it's not, it's got to be a real open thing. It's, I accept that. That, you know, maybe I would do it differently, but that doesn't matter. It's not relative.
Exactly. That's wonderful. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned from your client base, one reason that some women can't find their voice
Mhm.
is they're protecting something from their past, right? Elaborate on it.
Sure. So, women in particular, and I do focus on women as a coach. So, it's not that I'm leaving out the male gender, but just due to my specialty, that women were taught, and I think we're trying to break free of this now. And you know, here we are in 2023, almost 2024. But women are taught, be polite, be kind, don't ruffle feathers, don't argue, speak up, but don't speak up too loudly. Don't be too quiet, but make sure you raise a point, make sure people know you were there, but don't stand out. I mean, so many mixed messages. And so women really are taught to just exist, just be there and don't go beyond that. And we are protecting people, really, we're protecting a myth in not being able to have a strong voice now. We're protecting what our parents taught us or what our peers or our teachers taught us a long time ago because we think, well, they taught us this. It must be the way we're supposed to do it. Supposed to, should, you know, all those words that essentially mean nothing. But we're breaking free of that. And I'm so, it took me a while to break free from it. I mean, again, I'm about 53 years old, and it took me nearly 5 decades to feel comfortable to take that fake armor off and just let myself be authentically naked.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of power in that, but it's a battle to let go of it because there's resistance. There's still a lot of resistance even today.
And there's generations of resistance. And
Yes.
when you look for, I'm a single dad. I had two daughters, and that was probably the best learning experience of my entire life because having never been a teenage girl, I had to accept. I had to learn that validate feelings, accept that I can't fix stuff, let them work through it, and just be there to help and
Yes.
assist as need be. Okay. And I just saw them over Thanksgiving, and you see that they still say, "Well, Dad, this is what's expected," and for where they're currently working. And I would say to them, it's what you're accepting. It's not what's expected.
Right.
You see that?
Right. Mhm. I mean, when I hear things like that, I can feel those things in my body. When to hear your daughter say that, this is what I'm expected to do. I have to do it this way. It's like, no, you don't. That's just because one person above you is telling you that's how it's supposed to be. Nobody really, nobody really has a godlike presence to them to be the one to say this is right or this is wrong, because we all do things differently. This is like the perfect example. Every relationship has one person that likes to load the dishwasher one way, and then the other person does it quote unquote wrong, right? I mean, who are we to say what's right or wrong? Nobody. We just have to be able to do the best we can and do a good job, be respectful, right? Like if you're really career driven, whether you're a man or a woman or non-gender binary, whatever, commit to what you want. And I think, we're still afraid to do that.
Exactly, exactly, because it's indoctrinated. This is how it's done. You do this, then this, then this, then this. And one
Yes.
of the things I've heard you say, and that I believe very strongly, is there's many ways to get from point A to point B. There is no one way. There's not one road that you have to take. There's 14 different ways you can get there. What works best for you, correct?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow, this is amazing. So, Christine, now you did this for 20 years. You were very, very successful. Now you've left. What are you most proud of since you left the corporate sector?
Um, Honestly, I'm most proud of the privilege to be in the position that I am now, to guide other women out of all that muck we just talked about. I
Hmm.
mean, I am so proud to be in this position. And I'm in this position because I chose to do it, right? I mean, it's not like somebody handed it to me. We make careers out of learning and studying and taking the time to become experts at it. And unbeknownst to me, as I mentioned, I was already doing that as a child. I just needed to get all the technical uh, learning education certifications out of the way. But I am so proud to be in that position to guide these women and have them discover their true worthiness. And then something else that I'm really proud of, and something that I had questioned really for a really long time that we've talked about a little bit, is when we communicate, that we're not communicating to connect. And immediately there is that disconnect and misunderstanding. And so to have a firm grasp and realistic sight to why we get stuck with communication and why it causes so many problems, I also feel very fortunate to be in that position to help other people to see realistically, hey, you're not communicating, you're just speaking, right? You want to connect, you want to feel like you belong, you want to help other people feel like you belong. We have to connect better. So, having said those two things, which ideally make up being a life coach for mid career women and being a connection keynote speaker, it would be wrong for me to not say and recognize how proud I am of myself. And it's not in a way of, oh, way to go, teen Christine, you're awesome. It's because I stood up. I don't even want to use the word brave. I actually want to get rid of the word brave, because why do we have to be brave to stand on our own? Why do we have to be brave? We have all these inner conflicts about, oh, well, you were so brave to share that personal story. I don't want to be brave. I just want to be real. I just want to be able to share without fear and not have to be called brave. So I'm very proud of myself for taking that step and saying, you're going to spend the rest of your life being more curious than you are saying, no, I can't do that. And it's a big change. It's a big change.
Huge change. One of the things that I'm a veteran, I'm a Vietnam veteran. And one of the things when you talk with veterans or people talk to
Mhm.
veterans is veterans shut you out immediately if you're not a veteran. You don't understand. You weren't there. I don't care how many letters you have to after your degree. You weren't there. The
Yeah.
beauty of what you bring is you've been there.
Yes. And I do. I feel it's really powerful. And, I get pretty personal in my posts, especially on LinkedIn. I tell a real story because I was so afraid to for so long out of shame or protecting my past, the people in my past. And, who was I protecting? Who was I protecting and who was I hurting? I was hurting myself. And so many women do this every day because they just feel that's the course for them. And it's devastating. And nobody's ever going to understand. Just to your story about being a vet, nobody's ever going to understand. But what helps is to know that somebody else has walked that path or a similar path and say, I am not alone. I'm not alone. And that's so important to me.
That's the biggest connector, and why I admire what you're doing so much is because it's not theory. It's real. This is real. I live this. That's amazing. So what's your takeaway, Christine? What do you want the people around the world, the last thing you want them to remember?
Oh my gosh. This always comes up for me and I can't seem to break from it, but it's don't believe the hype, right? Don't believe the hype that you have to stay in this career because your parents suggested it to you. Don't believe the hype that you have to work a job in the family business because everybody before you did it. Don't believe the hype that as a woman, you're supposed to be thin and pretty all the time and wear perfect makeup and always be presentable. Don't believe it. Don't believe that because you are a woman, that you have to not stand out, not have a voice, and not speak your opinion. Don't believe it. Break free from all that. That's society bullcrap, right? These are myths really that truly nobody that has the strength within themselves lives a life that way. The people that say, you know what, this is bullcrap. I don't like it. This doesn't match me, which I guarantee you most people say. But then there's that next step. What's the choice? What are you going to do? And so when a person finds themselves, and a woman, she finds herself in that position where she's just, okay, I'm making the choice. I'm going to take that step forward. She begins ridding herself of all the dirty laundry that people have thrown on her year after year after year. And as she takes shirts, socks, dirty uniforms, everything off of her, she starts to see clearly and she starts to think clearly. And now her beliefs match what she actually says. Where before she was believing the hype and none of those things aligned. So don't believe the hype. Align yourself with what you really believe and start living your life fantastically, fabulously, stupendously as you were meant to live.
What a great ending note. That's amazing. All right, Christine. If people are going to see this, they're going to want to get a hold of you. How do they get a hold of you?
Oh, what an honor that would be, Frank. And, first of all, I welcome conversations, period. I welcome new connections. I love it. I love meeting people. And really, the best way to find me is through my website, which is my full name. So it's www.christine, Chrisistine, my last name, Passo, P is in Peter, ASSO.com. So ChristinePasso.com. Every avenue to connect with me is on my website.
And ladies and gentlemen, her information will be when this thing goes live and you're seeing this, the information will be there. We are just about out of time. I want to thank Christine again for showing us showing women, it's never too late to find your voice and live a fulfilling life, to not believe the hype or not believe the myths that you've been told your entire life. Now you can see this show on my podcast. You also see it on Parade Deck on my YouTube channel, which is also called Frank Sakari because I'm not the most original guy here. We also send a link to Christine, and she'll post it everywhere she posts things. So this thing will be out there and you'll be able to find it. If you use the YouTube channel, please subscribe. Now, let me leave you with this, as I do every week. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Christine showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week. We look at another life-altering event. Christine, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank. It's been a pleasure.